A magnificent shadow, fluid and powerful, moved with silent grace across the vast canvas of the African savanna. It was a leopard, a creature of legend and fear, now approaching the remote village with a retinue of tiny dappled cubs trailing cautiously behind her. Their unannounced arrival sparked a primal mix of apprehension and awe among the villagers, a ripple of unease through the sun-baked dust. This was no ordinary sighting. Whispers began to circulate, tinged with a deep, almost ancient understanding. The narrative that unfolded was one of extraordinary reunion, a profound debt of gratitude, and a connection forged 11 years ago, now resurfacing from the depths of memory. In a modest research outpost perched on the savannah's edge, within sight of the very village now grappling with the leopard's presence, lived Sarah, an American environmental biologist in her late 20s. Her existence here was a testament to a lifelong devotion. With sun-kissed skin, eyes that held the wisdom of countless hours spent observing wildlife, and hands calloused from field work, Sarah had dedicated her life to the intricate dance of wildlife conservation in Africa. She was deeply woven into the fabric of this land, connected not just to its complex ecosystem, but also to the resilient local community who had welcomed her years ago. Since childhood, the dream of saving animals had burned brightly within her, propelling her across continents to this very spot where the wild heart of the world beat strongest. Her days were a relentless pursuit of balance, studying animal populations, mitigating human-wildlife conflict, and championing the delicate coexistence that defined this vibrant yet fragile environment. The sudden arrival of the leopard and her small, vulnerable litter immediately injected a palpable tension into the serene village life. Although the people here had long lived alongside the wild, accustomed to the distant roar of a lion or the swift flash of an antelope, the proximity of a predator with young was different. It reawakened old anxieties, a deep-seated wariness that had been passed down through generations. Livestock, the very lifeline of their survival, seemed suddenly more vulnerable, an easy target for a hungry mother. And then there were the children, their bright laughter echoing freely through the village streets, now seemingly exposed. Old fears, long dormant superstitions about the wilderness and its unpredictable inhabitants, began to stir, threatening to unravel the fragile peace. This new conflict, however, was not entirely new for Sarah. It triggered a vivid, almost visceral flashback to a pivotal moment 11 years prior. A younger Sarah, then just 17, had embarked on a gap year before college, her heart already set on a future intertwined with the wild. During one of her earliest, formative research trips in this very region, she made a discovery that would irrevocably alter her path. Tucked away beneath a thorny acacia, barely moving, lay a severely injured leopard cub, abandoned, helpless, and teetering on the brink of death. The sight had been both heartbreaking and galvanizing, a raw display of nature's indifference and its boundless capacity for suffering. The narrative of this young cub's fate and Sarah's impending action presented an immediate, profound ethical dilemma. To intervene, to interfere with the brutal, beautiful, and often unforgiving course of nature, or to stand back and let fate decide. This was the stark choice presented to her, a choice that would define her future, and, as would become clear, the future of the magnificent leopard now standing at the village's edge. This was where the story truly began, a tale of compassion, courage, and an unbreakable bond forged against all odds. Don't miss this incredible story of connection and gratitude. Subscribe now for more amazing wildlife narratives. The young Sarah, driven by a stubborn conviction that defied the common wisdom of the savannah, refused to abandon the creature. Her heart, still brimming with the idealism of youth yet already tempered by an innate understanding of suffering, overruled the practical warnings of the grizzled local guides. They had seen too many cubs succumb to the harsh realities of the wild, too many human interventions end in tragedy. But Sarah saw only a flicker of life, a desperate plea in the cub's wide, intelligent eyes. Against their fervent advice, she made the courageous, some might say foolish, decision to rescue the leopard cub. Back at her makeshift camp, a crude canvas tent barely shielding them from the relentless sun, Sarah began the meticulous, clandestine process of nursing it back to health. She scoured her limited supplies, transforming antiseptic wipes and gauze intended for human scrapes into rudimentary bandages for a wild animal. Painstakingly, she cleaned the deep, festering wounds that riddled its small body, a testament to a brutal struggle for survival. Her growing, albeit still nascent, knowledge of animal care, gleaned from countless hours spent poring over textbooks and field guides, became her sole compass. Each day was a precarious balance of hope and despair, a silent battle against infection and the ever-present threat of starvation. During these challenging initial days, help emerged from unexpected quarters. Her initial interactions with the village elders had been tinged with polite skepticism. But one venerable woman, Mama Lena, possessed an ancient wisdom that transcended immediate judgment. Mama Lena, with eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of generations, watched Sarah's struggle with quiet intensity. She offered not direct aid, but invaluable insight, speaking in parables about the delicate balance between humans and wildlife, the sacred duty of stewardship, and the unforeseen ripples of every action. Her words became a quiet wellspring of strength for Sarah. And then there was Django, a nimble young boy from the nearby village, whose boundless energy and intimate knowledge of the local flora proved indispensable. He would often appear silently with a handful of crushed leaves or roots, pointing to plants Sarah hadn't yet identified, explaining their traditional medicinal properties. Their shared endeavor, though unspoken, forged an unusual bond between the determined American girl, the wise elder, and the curious boy. Under Sarah's devoted care and with the subtle, knowing assistance of her new allies, the fragile cub, whom Sarah affectionately named Shadow for its shy, elusive nature, gradually began to regain its strength. Its trembling limbs steadied, its breath deepened, and the dullness in its eyes slowly gave way to a vibrant, curious sparkle. The narrative of its recovery became a series of small, hard-won victories, moments of gentle interaction, hand-feeding it a concoction of goat's milk and fortifying supplements drop by painstaking drop solidified their connection. Sarah would sit for hours, talking softly to the cub, watching its fur regain its luster, its movements grow more confident. Soon, the cub's playful nature began to emerge, first with tentative swatting at dangling leaves, then with more boisterous pounces on Sarah's shoelaces, always met with her quiet, reassuring laughter. A deep, unspoken bond formed between them, one built on trust, vulnerability, and an unshakable sense of mutual respect. Yet, as Shadow's recovery progressed, a new, more complex ethical dilemma began to overshadow Sarah's triumph. The challenge of releasing a habituated predator back into the unforgiving wild loomed large. Every shared moment, every gentle touch, every successful feeding paradoxically deepened the problem. Concerns mounted. Would Shadow, accustomed to human kindness, ever truly regain its natural instincts to hunt independently? Would its lack of fear towards humans make it a target for poachers, or worse, a potential danger to the very village that had indirectly sheltered its recovery? The shadow of its future cast a long, disquieting pall over Sarah's otherwise joyous success. Determined not to let her efforts be in vain, Sarah poured her energy into designing a comprehensive rehabilitation plan. It was an ambitious undertaking, requiring endless patience and careful strategizing. Her core objective was to rewild Shadow, to erase the human imprint without breaking the bond of care that had saved its life. She began by introducing it to small, live prey in a controlled environment, slowly encouraging its innate hunting instincts. She gradually reduced their direct human contact, allowing Shadow to spend increasing amounts of time alone, relying on its own senses and growing physical prowess. The ultimate goal was to prepare the young leopard for its eventual release into a protected area, a vast expanse of wilderness far removed from the tempting proximity of the village, ensuring both its safety and the community's peace of mind. Every step was a tightrope walk, fraught with the immense responsibility she felt for this extraordinary creature's future. The morning sun, still gentle, cast long shadows across the savannah as Sarah prepared for the most difficult task she had ever faced. Shadow, no longer a helpless cub, but a sleek, agile juvenile, paced restlessly in the large enclosure Sarah had meticulously constructed. The time had come for her release. Sarah's heart ached with a profound, almost physical pain, a sensation she hadn't anticipated. She had spent countless hours nurturing this creature, watching it grow from a fragile, injured bundle into a magnificent symbol of wild grace. Every purr, every playful swat, every shared moment had woven an intricate tapestry of connection between them. She knelt, her hand trembling slightly as she unlatched the gate. Shadow paused, turning its head to look at her. Those amber eyes, once filled with fear, now held a deep, knowing intelligence. There was no fear in them anymore, only a silent question. Sarah whispered a soft goodbye, a promise to the wild that she hoped Shadow would understand. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, the leopard streaked out, a blur of spots against the golden grass, disappearing almost instantly into the dense foliage. The silence that followed was deafening, amplified by the absence of Shadow's presence. Sarah stayed there for a long time, the empty enclosure a stark reminder of her loss, yet also a testament to her success. It was the right thing to do, she knew, but that knowledge did little to ease the ache. 11 years had since slipped by, much like Shadow into the bush. Sarah was now a respected environmental biologist, her dedication and expertise having secured vital funding for a long-term conservation project right here in the heart of Africa. The small research outpost, once a dream, was now a bustling hub of activity, a testament to her unwavering commitment. Yet, despite the successes, Shadow was never far from her thoughts. She often found herself gazing across the vast plains, wondering if her efforts, her painful decision to let go, had truly made a lasting difference. Had Shadow thrived? Had she remembered the girl who nurtured her back to life? Now, the adult leopard and her cubs, a beautiful sight that should have brought unadulterated joy, remained stubbornly close to the village. Their continued proximity created an escalating wave of anxiety within the community. Livestock had begun to disappear with alarming frequency, and the villagers, their patience worn thin, grew increasingly vocal about the perceived threat. Whispers of calling local wildlife authorities, and the grim specter of relocation or even culling, hung heavy in the air. Sarah found herself caught in a torturous bind. Her professional duty demanded she protect both the human population and the wildlife she championed. Yet, a deep, almost spiritual intuition gnawed at her, an unshakable feeling that this particular leopard was not just a random wild animal. It felt special, connected to her in a way she couldn't articulate. An inexplicable pull drew her towards the animal. Driven by this potent instinct, Sarah began to discreetly observe the leopard's behavior from a distance. Typical wild leopards were notoriously wary of humans, maintaining a respectful, often unseen, distance. But this leopard, this magnificent female with her two playful cubs, exhibited unusual patterns. She seemed less afraid, less inclined to vanish at the first hint of human presence. More than once, Sarah noticed the leopard appearing in areas she herself frequented during the time she cared for Shadow. It was as if the animal was deliberately tracing an old, familiar path, a ghost of a memory stirring in the savanna dust. Each observation fueled Sarah's conviction that this was no ordinary leopard. This was Shadow. The rising tension culminated in an urgent village council meeting, called by the stoic but worried chief. The air in the communal hut was thick with a mixture of fear and frustration. Villagers spoke in hushed, then increasingly agitated tones, recounting lost goats, disturbed nights, and the ever-present shadow of the magnificent yet terrifying predator. They demanded immediate action, their voices a chorus of anxiety echoing off the mud-brick walls. The chief, a man wise in the ways of both his people and the land, understood their plight. He respected Sarah and her dedication, yet his paramount duty was the safety and well-being of his community. The pressure was mounting, palpable and unavoidable. Sarah, seated amongst the elders, felt the weight of their collective fear. When it was her turn to speak, she advocated for understanding, for patience. She suggested non-lethal deterrence, stronger enclosures, and a more thorough observation period before resorting to drastic measures. Her words were met with a mix of polite nods and overt skepticism from some of the villagers. One elderly woman, her face etched with years of hard living, pointedly asked why this particular leopard seemed so persistent near their homes. Sarah proposed a comprehensive plan to track the leopard diligently, to truly understand its movements and intentions, asserting that what they perceived as problematic behavior might simply be a misinterpretation of a wild animal's natural patterns. Her voice, though calm, conveyed a quiet urgency, a plea for a chance to prove her hypothesis. It was during one of these intense observation sessions, camouflaged amongst the tall grasses, that Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The leopard, majestic and powerful, was stretched out in a patch of sunlight, her cubs tumbling playfully nearby. Sarah, through her high-powered binoculars, focused on the feline's flank. There, distinctly visible even after all these years, was a jagged, raised scar. It was precisely where she had stitched the wound, a deep gash from what must have been a brutal encounter in its youth. The memory flooded back with overwhelming clarity, the frantic days, the careful suturing, the desperate hope that the cub would survive. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the savanna. It was Shadow. There was no longer any doubt. Sarah's scientific mind, trained in objective analysis, grappled with the profound emotional impact of this discovery. The leopard she had saved, the cub she had nurtured back from the brink of death, had returned. Not only returned, but had chosen to bring her own offspring to this very region, to the periphery of the place where her life had once been saved. This realization deepened her resolve to protect the animal beyond professional obligation. It became a fiercely personal mission, Yet, it also significantly complicated her strategy. How could she explain this extraordinary bond to the villagers, to the authorities, without sounding irrational? With this confirmation, Sarah began to interpret Shadow's presence differently. She watched hours upon hours, sometimes from a distance, sometimes from the relative safety of her jeep. She noticed that Shadow would often lurk on the edges of her research outpost or along the familiar boundaries of the village, but rarely ventured deep within. The leopard, powerful and capable, seemed to be exercising an unusual restraint. She would observe, her amber eyes scanning the activity, sometimes for long periods, before slipping away silently. It wasn't the cunning, predatory stalking she'd seen in other wild cats. It was almost as if Shadow was trying to communicate, or simply be near her, without causing harm. The cubs, too, seemed to mimic their mother's careful vigilance. The subtle nuances in Shadow's behavior spoke volumes, suggesting a complex intention far beyond mere hunger or territoriality. There was a unique narrative unfolding, a silent conversation between species, a profound connection tested by time and the wild. The mounting pressure from the villagers weighed heavily on Sarah, but her conviction about Shadow solidified with each passing day. One sweltering afternoon, driven by an insatiable need to understand Shadow's patterns better, Sarah ventured deeper into the savannah than her usual observation points. The heat shimmered above the dry grass, and the air hung heavy and still. She moved with practiced caution, her eyes scanning the horizon, her senses finely tuned to the subtle whispers of the wild. The chirping of insects and the distant cry of a raptor were the only sounds disturbing the quiet. She thought she was alone, immersed in her quiet vigil, tracking faint prints in the dust, a new sense of purpose guiding her every step. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl ripped through the silence, vibrating through the ground beneath her feet. Sarah froze, her heart leaping into her throat. This was not Shadow's familiar presence. This was a different energy, raw and overtly aggressive. From the dense thicket to her left, a massive male leopard emerged. Its coat was darker, scarred from countless battles, and its eyes burned with an unmistakable territorial aggression. It wasn't interested in a casual encounter. It saw her as an intruder, a threat to its domain. The male lowered its head, ears flattened against its skull, and let out another chilling snarl, a clear warning. Sarah knew immediately that this was a truly dangerous situation. Her mind raced, calculating escape routes, but she was exposed, too far from cover. The leopard coiled its powerful muscles, preparing to charge, its gaze fixed on her with predatory intent. In that terrifying instant, a blur of spotted fur launched from the opposite side of the thicket. It was Shadow. She appeared as if from nowhere, her two cubs momentarily visible behind her, wide-eyed and huddled together. But Shadow didn't hesitate. Instead of fleeing, instead of protecting her offspring by retreating, she lunged with incredible speed and force towards the aggressive male leopard. The two powerful predators collided in a whirlwind of teeth and claws, a brief, violent skirmish that seemed to happen in slow motion, yet was over in a flash. Snarls and roars echoed across the savannah as they grappled, a desperate dance of dominance and protection. Shadow, though slightly smaller, fought with an unyielding ferocity, a primal maternal instinct fueling her every strike. The confrontation was brutal but decisive. Shadow, with surprising agility and a focused strategy, managed to land a powerful scratch across the male's snout, disorienting it. The larger leopard, now bleeding and clearly surprised by Shadow's uncharacteristic boldness and tenacity, let out a frustrated growl, broke off the engagement, and melted back into the undergrowth, defeated. Shadow had successfully driven off the aggressive male, but not without consequence. A fresh, shallow gash marred her shoulder, a testament to her courage. Sarah stood there, trembling, her breath catching in her throat, witnessing the raw power and protective instinct of the animal she had saved so long ago. As the echoes of the fight faded, Shadow turned her magnificent head towards Sarah. Her eyes, those familiar, intelligent amber eyes, met Sarah's. For a profound, suspended moment, time seemed to stand still. There was an undeniable glimmer of recognition, an unspoken understanding, and yes, a deep, silent gratitude in the leopard's gaze. It was a language beyond words, a confirmation of their unique and unbreakable bond that transcended species. Her cubs, now venturing a little closer, watched their mother, then Sarah, with an innocent curiosity, perhaps sensing the extraordinary connection unfolding before them. Emotionally overwhelmed, yet filled with a profound sense of awe, Sarah slowly, carefully, took a step forward. Shadow remained still, allowing her approach. Sarah reached out a tentative hand, and to her astonishment, Shadow lowered her head, nudging against Sarah's palm with a soft, rumbling purr deep in her chest. It was a gesture of trust, of affection, a silent acknowledgement of their shared history. Then, as if the moment had to remain fleeting, Shadow turned, gathered her cubs with a gentle nudge, and disappeared silently back into the golden savanna, leaving Sarah alone, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror, wonder, and an undeniable truth. Shadow had not returned by chance. She had returned. News of the dramatic encounter, of Shadow's fierce defense against the territorial male, spread through the village like wildfire. At first, there was a palpable disbelief, a collective shaking of heads at the sheer impossibility of such an act. A wild leopard protecting a human. It defied all conventional wisdom, all the ingrained fears passed down through generations. But then, as Sarah recounted the event with unwavering conviction, emphasizing Shadow's protective instinct not just for her, but for the delicate balance of the entire ecosystem, the disbelief slowly began to morph into something else, a profound, quiet awe. She spoke of the male leopard's aggression, the danger to them both, and how Shadow's intervention had averted a potentially tragic confrontation, not just for herself but for the village, by keeping an unpredictable, dangerous male away. It was Mama Lena, the village elder whose wisdom was as deep as the ancient baobab trees that dotted the landscape, who cemented this shift. She gathered the villagers, her voice a calm, resonant force, interpreting Shadow's return and her astonishing act of protection as a powerful sign. Mama Lena spoke not of coincidence, but of destiny, of the intricate interconnectedness of all living things. She reminded them of Sarah's selfless act 11 years prior, a young girl nursing a dying cub back to health against the odds, against the sometimes harsh realities of the wild. The savannah remembers, Mama Lena intoned, her gaze sweeping across the faces of her people. The spirit of the land, the spirit of Shadow, remembers kindness. This is not a predator's random act. This is gratitude, a circle completed. She protects the one who protected her, and in doing so, protects us all by bringing balance. Her words resonated deeply, tapping into a wellspring of ancient beliefs and respect for nature that had always been present, though perhaps overshadowed by modern fears. The villagers' initial terror of the leopard began, almost imperceptibly, to transform into a cautious, yet undeniable, respect. They started to perceive Shadow not merely as a dangerous predator, a threat to their livelihoods and children, but something more profound, a guardian, a creature with a rich history intrinsically tied to their own community, and to Sarah's unwavering compassion. This shift in perception was critical, a fragile seed of understanding planted where fear had once reigned supreme. Seizing this newfound openness, Sarah presented a comprehensive plan to the village council. It was not a plea for unconditional acceptance of a dangerous animal, but a pragmatic approach to coexistence. Her proposal detailed specific, actionable steps, reinforcing all livestock enclosures with stronger, higher fencing to deter nocturnal visits, establishing clearly defined safe zones for children's play, and most crucially, working in tandem with local guides to create a dedicated wildlife corridor. This corridor, carefully mapped out to follow natural game trails and water sources, would allow Shadow and her cubs to move safely through the broader landscape without needing to venture close to the village boundaries. It was a solution designed to protect both the community and the magnificent animals they now viewed with a more nuanced understanding. To further solidify this fragile truce, Sarah dedicated herself to educating the community. She organized workshops, tailored for both children and adults, focusing intently on leopard behavior. She taught them how to identify warning signs of a leopard's presence, how to react if they encountered one in the wild, and most importantly, how to coexist respectfully with these powerful creatures. These sessions were not simply lectures. They were interactive, empowering discussions, offering practical knowledge that demystified the leopard and replaced irrational fear with informed awareness. The village, once gripped by apprehension, slowly but surely began to feel empowered, understanding that they held a crucial role in fostering this delicate balance. The village, galvanized by a shared purpose and Sarah's unwavering dedication, embarked on the ambitious plan with a spirit of renewed cooperation. Reinforced bomas, stronger and taller than anything they'd constructed before, began to rise around the livestock pens, crafted from locally sourced materials and fortified with ingenuity. The collective effort was palpable. Men and women worked side by side, their conversations filled not with fear, but with a cautious optimism. Django, now a young man with a keen understanding of the bush and an innate sense of responsibility, emerged as a vital leader in this endeavor. His youthful energy, combined with his deep knowledge of the land, gleaned from years spent tracking and observing, made him indispensable. He helped map out the safest routes for villagers moving between their homes and fields, simultaneously identifying and clearing paths for the designated wildlife corridor, ensuring minimal overlap and maximum safety for all. Sarah and Django became an inseparable monitoring team, their days spent diligently tracking Shadow and her growing cubs. They moved with purpose and stealth through the savannah, their eyes always scanning for paw prints, their ears attuned to the subtle symphony of the wild. Every sighting of Shadow, every confirmation that she was respecting the newly established boundaries, was a small victory, reinforcing the fragile trust that was slowly blossoming. They meticulously documented the leopard family's movements, learning their new patterns, understanding their preferences, and observing how effectively the implemented strategies were working. There were moments of anxiety, of course, when Shadow ventured a little too close to the periphery, but each time she eventually veered away, seemingly acknowledging the invisible lines drawn for coexistence. The narrative of Shadow's cubs learning their own path in the wild became a fascinating study of natural development and the success of Sarah's intervention. Under their mother's watchful eye, they honed their hunting skills, starting with smaller prey and gradually progressing to more formidable challenges. They moved with the grace and stealth of true wild leopards, their instincts sharp, their futures promising. Their growth demonstrated the profound positive impact of allowing a wild animal to return to its natural role, away from the direct human-wildlife conflict that had initially threatened their very existence. These young leopards, once potential symbols of danger, were now becoming integral parts of the robust ecosystem, living proof that coexistence was not just a pipe dream, but a tangible reality. Sarah continued her observations, often from a respectful distance, allowing Shadow the wild space she needed. Yet, there were moments, fleeting but powerful, where their enduring connection manifested. Sometimes, as Sarah watched through her binoculars, Shadow would stop, lift her majestic head, and cast a lingering gaze in Sarah's general direction. It wasn't an aggressive stare, but an acknowledged presence, a tilt of the head that spoke volumes without a single sound. In those silent exchanges, Sarah felt a deep reassurance, a confirmation that the bond forged years ago, though now adapted to the wild, had never truly broken. The leopard was unequivocally part of the ecosystem, a sovereign creature of the wild, but her past, her unique history with a young girl who dared to save her, never truly left her. The village, once marked by fear and resentment towards the encroaching wilderness, gradually began to thrive in a greater, more sophisticated harmony with its environment. The presence of Shadow and her cubs, once a looming source of terror and potential conflict, transformed into something far more profound. They became a living symbol of resilience, a testament to the powerful impact of compassion, and a constant, awe-inspiring reminder of the extraordinary gratitude that could manifest even in the deepest heart of the wild. The story of Shadow was no longer just Sarah's story. It was the village's story, a shared narrative of understanding, adaptation, and profound respect. Shadow and her now adolescent cubs, vibrant and strong, eventually established a sprawling territory further away from the village, but still comfortably within the protective boundaries of Sarah's established conservation area. They roamed the vast savanna, living wild, untamed lives as nature had always intended. Yet their existence was forever intertwined with a unique, extraordinary history. The reinforced bomas and the carefully mapped wildlife corridor proved incredibly effective. The village remained safe, and the once frequent attacks on livestock ceased entirely. A peaceful rhythm settled over the land, a testament to thoughtful planning and the profound capacity for adaptation, both human and animal. Sarah often observed Shadow and her grown cubs from a distance, hidden amongst the acacia trees or perched on a rocky outcrop. A profound sense of peace, a deep, resonant fulfillment washed over her with each sighting. She would recall, with a bittersweet pang, the fragile, injured cub she had discovered 11 years ago, the risk she had taken, the endless nights of worry and care, and the extraordinary, unbelievable return that had defied all scientific explanation. It was a testament, she knew, to the undeniable power of kindness, the remarkable intelligence and emotional depth of animals, and the deep, often unseen connections that truly bind all living beings in this ancient, wild landscape. Shadow's return wasn't just a singular event. It was a living, breathing testament to the idea that compassion, extended without expectation, could ripple through time and manifest in the most unexpected and awe-inspiring ways. Sarah's story, this incredible saga of a leopard and the girl who saved her, along with her innovative approach to conservation, soon became an inspiration far beyond the immediate savanna. It drew significant attention to ethical wildlife management, demonstrating the critical importance of deep community engagement in protecting vulnerable species. The small, once fearful village, now a beacon of coexistence between humans and the wild, became a model for other communities grappling with similar challenges. Delegations from across the continent, and indeed from around the globe, visited to learn from their unique success, eager to replicate the delicate balance achieved through understanding and respect. The legacy of Shadow and Sarah wasn't measured merely in protected lands or thriving animal populations, but in the profound shift in perspective. It underscored a vital truth. True conservation extends beyond scientific data and protected habitats. It is fundamentally about fostering understanding, cultivating empathy, and building respect between human societies and the natural world they inhabit. It's about recognizing that every creature, no matter how wild or formidable, can carry a memory of kindness, and that gratitude can indeed manifest in the most unexpected and powerful ways, even within the heart of a magnificent predator. This journey taught everyone involved that the wilderness, far from being a collection of isolated elements, is a complex, interconnected web of relationships. It showed that by nurturing one thread, by extending a hand of compassion, one could strengthen the entire tapestry. The story of Shadow, the leopard who remembered, became a whispered legend around village fires, a reminder that the greatest wilderness lay not just in the expanse of the savanna, but in the boundless capacity for connection and mutual respect between all life forms. It was a story that truly touched the heart, a testament to what happens when we listen, when we trust, and when we dare to believe in the extraordinary.